It's been about 3 years since we first covered the Xbox Series S and how it was an absolute beast when it came to emulation performance using developer mode. And I think right now is a good time to revisit the system, because even 3 years on, I still consider the Series S a contender for something emulation enthusiasts may want to consider. These days, of course, there are handhelds and mini PCs that really can achieve excellent performance, including the Steam Deck, the ROG Ally, and many of these smaller cheap mini PCs for around a $300 price point. But of course, the Series S is also around the same price at $299, and it's still incredible for the emulation experience you get. And this is not a recycled video in any stretch of the imagination. It's more of an update because you may have heard that the entire scene had died when Microsoft blocked the use of emulators in retail mode. However, Devmode is still 100% operational, and the homebrew community has doubled down. They haven't gone anywhere. In fact, they've continued to build UWP apps that can run on the Xbox Series and the Xbox One, I might add. And I gotta tell you, things haven't been any more exciting as they are right now. Now, first of all, let's do a quick recap of what we're talking about here. Xbox retail consoles have two modes. There's retail mode, and that is the standard mode when you turn on your system. And in retail mode, it's in a normal state. You can play games, run apps through the Microsoft Store, use Game Pass, all that fun stuff. In developer mode, you can develop and test software for the console, but you cannot play retail games or run retail apps, and you certainly cannot use Game Pass. Developer mode can be enabled on any retail Xbox console via the Devmode app found on the Microsoft Store. And once you've set up with developer mode on your retail system, you can easily switch back and forth if you need to. And there is a one-time activation that you need to pay as well. Now, to clear up any misconception, porting UWP apps and emulators is no way abusing this service at all. The whole goal of Devmode is for developers to build and run their own applications on a device that supports UWP, and the Xbox obviously comes with that functionality. The walled-off sandbox means that it will never require any type of weird loopholes to get these apps running on retail. So let's summarize and revisit a few things before we talk about the new stuff. The Xbox Series S and X, with its Zen 2 architecture and powerful GPU, has enough under the hood to emulate many retro consoles up to and including the Xbox 360. Sony PlayStation 2, Nintendo GameCube, Wii and Dolphin, Sega Dreamcast have all been emulated for years, and they all run exceptionally well. And thanks to the architecture of the hardware, it means internal resolution upscaling is also quite possible on most emulators that support it. Now, as a guideline, I find that internally upscaling resolutions up to around 2K for the Series S and 4K on the Series X will be the sweet spot that you're looking for. But this is obviously dependent on the emulator that's being used. Another very impressive emulator that we have covered on the channel before is DuckStation. This is a PlayStation 1 emulator, and it's the best in class hands down, and it has all the features you'd expect to see here running on the Xbox Series X, and you can even upscale resolutions higher than 4K. It's quite impressive. Other systems like the Nintendo 64 and older 8 and 16-bit systems and computers have various retro ARC cores that are also supported. Last year we saw the first port of Xenia, the Xbox 360 emulator, that has also seen significant strides, and there's also a UWP version available as well that can run many Xbox 360 titles on your Series S and X. The Xbox 360 is a very complex piece of hardware to emulate correctly, and it's something that you really have to just kind of check into and see every once in a while to see how progress is being made. But as you can see here, things are moving along quite nicely. And one of the great things about Xenia is that you can run XBLA games and a lot of delisted games that are no longer available to you. As well as this, it also runs Red Dead Redemption exceptionally well on my Series S here, even with some internal resolution upscaling. The problem is, however, that the Xbox UWP homebrew and emulation scene, the Devmode scene, whatever you want to call it, has kind of just remained stagnant for a long time. After the kind of flurry of Dolphin, Xenia, and the PCSX2 implementation, things had kind of stalled, with some of the UWP developers just pretty much just leaving the scene completely and never being heard from again. This meant that a lot of the emulators that I've talked about have not seen updates in at least a year, and some of them in a couple of years. Now, some people have wondered why more emulators and homebrew and ports have not been running on UWP and on the Xbox. A lot of it has to do with Xbox's dependency on using DirectX 12 as its graphics API. And this limits what would be possible on the Xbox via UWP, as some emulators out there don't use DX12 at all, and while others do support DX12, it's preferred to use an OpenGL or a Vulkan API instead for more compatibility. But everything has changed now, because back in March of this year, developer Airi-san had ported Mesa 3D, which is the open source OpenGL and Vulkan implementation, to UWP. This means that now a Vulkan and OpenGL implementation that sits on top of DX12 is supported and available. This means that it opens up the door for new games, emulators, and software to be ported on the Xbox. And let me tell you, the floodgate is starting to open up. Now, you might be wondering, a OpenGL or a Vulkan wrapper that sits on top of DX12 sounds like it would really have some performance implications. Well, let's go ahead and look at that in some more detail. This is the Mesa implementation running on the Series S of the open source Doom 3 implementation. It even supports HDR and runs at a native 4K on the Series S, as you can see here. And it looks and it runs superb. So this is all thanks to the UWP Mesa 3D library implementation, and this is of course OpenGL Doom 3 running on the Series S. It's quite impressive. One emulator that simply wasn't possible before without the Mesa implementation, and my pick of the best new reason to check out Devmode on the Series S, is Supermodel. This is a Sega Model 3 arcade emulator that can run many Model 3 games, including Daytona USA 2, Scud Race, Sega Rally 2 Spike Out, and many others. This is absolutely incredible to see Model 3 games now running on the Xbox. Sega fans probably know that there was a port of Daytona 2 officially if you own Like a Dragon Gaiden, but it was rebranded to avoid any licensing issues, and to get to that point you need to at least skip about an hour of cutscenes to get there. Supermodel isn't the most user-friendly emulator, and there is no UI, but the UWP version lets you load ROMs from an external USB, and the stock controller layout maps to the Xbox controller quite nicely. You can also add in 16:9 widescreen support to most games by tweaking the ini file, and again, it's not perfect. The emulation possesses long-standing graphical issues, and the emulator itself is still considered a work in progress, but most of the big games run, and they run very well. Performance is excellent, and this is damn impressive to see Model 3 arcade games. And between us, the only thing I've been playing outside of Elden Ring is this emulator. It's just that good. My good friends at Night Dive Studios recently released Dark Forces Remaster, and it's one of my favorite games of 2024, and it really made me want to see the sequel Dark Forces 2 on modern consoles. Now, I'm not sure if that's actually something that's in the works right now, but what I do know is that once again, the community has provided the solution. What we're looking at here is OpenJKDF2, which is a function-by-function reimplementation of Dark Forces 2 in C, and this is the native UWP app that's running on my Xbox Series S. And for me, the Series S is almost the perfect system for this, as it runs the game at very high performance and has all those quality of life enhancements we just mentioned. If you were a fan of the Dark Forces Remaster and you want to get more of the Star Wars universe, then check out Dark Forces 2. For me, it's kind of the pinnacle of the actual series itself before it kind of fell away in its later games. Now, some people may disagree with that, but for me, Jedi Knight Dark Forces 2 is absolutely amazing, and I'm so happy that it's available on the Series S. And huge thanks to the community for getting this port up and running. It's absolutely incredible. Remember those emulators that I talked about at the start of the episode that hadn't seen any updates in years? Well, thanks to the new Mesa implementation and the newfound interest in the Xbox Devmode scene, there's been some recent updates to all of them, including DuckStation, Xenia, and Dolphin, with updates on the way for PCSX2 as well. and this obviously has the benefit of more accuracy with the latest updates available on the Xbox. And in some instances, especially with RetroArch, OpenGL is the best renderer to use for something like Nintendo 64 emulation, which has also seen an update to the new core. There's also been a bunch of new ports that have been developed for UWP as well, and while I haven't had the chance to look at all of them yet, I will tell you guys about a website, XboxDev Store, that houses all the apps, emulators that you need for anyone who wants to get everything in one place, as well as new announcements. And this is really cool for people that want to get into the Devmode scene for the very first time. It's a very clear and concise website, very easy to understand, and some titles here also will support the Xbox One. But of course your mileage may vary here, as performance will definitely suffer, especially on the emulation side. And if you're someone that does prefer to use emulation front ends, there's also a few in development for UWP, and they are also been outlined in the Xbox Dev Store here as well. I will leave a link to the Xbox Dev Store in the description below. Check it out. This is not affiliated, not sponsored or anything like that. I'm just a fan that loves to see these types of things happening. Now, I gotta be honest with you guys, the retail mode Fallout last year left a sour taste in my mouth, and I felt like dev mode emulators and ports were a thing of the past, and it wasn't really anything that I was interested in covering going forward, especially with the mini PC craze that's going on right now. But the community is growing once again. There are some fantastic people behind the scenes doing this for the passion and love of all things open source, and I'm very excited about what else we'll see running on UWP. The door is definitely open now for other emulators such as Xemu, or even potentially PlayStation 3 emulation may be possible. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I don't think that you'll find anything better at $299 for emulation other than the Series S. There are some mini PCs out there that will definitely compete, and in some areas will do better, but for a one-stop piece of hardware, you can't beat it. There's definitely some hoops to jump through, and there's definitely no easy one-click installer, but once you've set everything up and dialed everything in, it's an incredible experience. But we're going to leave it here for today's episode, guys. I hope you enjoyed this updated look at dev mode on the Xbox. I'm very, very happy to see that the scene hasn't completely died out, and it was something that I felt like was going to happen. But once again, the scene lives on. The community will always be there, continuing to do really cool stuff, and I'm very, very happy that this is available. I think that if you just buy a Series S for $299 and use it exclusively for emulators in dev mode and ROMs, then you're going to really just make this thing pay for itself. It's an absolute beast. We're going to leave it here for today's episode, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you guys in the next episode. Bye for now.